Aurora Parker, age 27, woke up in a sterile hospital room under the dim hum of fluorescent lights. Her body felt foreign, heavy, disconnected. Beneath the scratchy hospital blanket, her legs were encased in cold metal rods. A sharp ache pulsed up her spine, but even that couldn't compare to the hollow sting in her chest. The kind that doesn't come from injury, but from betrayal. Her fingers trembled as she reached for her phone. A new voicemail blinked. From her mother, Karen Parker. Her voice, cheerful and breezy, played over the speaker. "Hi, honey! Your dad and I are just boarding our flight to Rome. We figured since Ethan's between jobs again, this trip would do him good. The doctor said you'll be in the hospital for a while, so no point in us just sitting around Chicago, right?" Laughter echoed in the background. Her brother Ethan, unmistakably smug. "Thanks for the spending money, sis. Ciao, Bella." Aurora dropped the phone. It slid from her hand and onto the blanket. They were gone. They had actually gone. Not just after the accident, almost immediately after. And they had used her money to pay for it. 3 nights earlier, Aurora had stayed late at Red Line Tech in downtown Chicago, finalizing a major software rollout. She drove home after midnight, exhausted but satisfied. Her performance bonus was due, enough to finally start saving for her own apartment, but she never made it home. A drunk driver in an SUV ran a red light and slammed into her side at full speed. The world turned to shattered glass and screaming metal. She remembered nothing until now. The first thing she asked upon waking wasn't about her injuries. It was, "Where are my parents?" The nurse told her they'd been notified immediately. They had come by, briefly, while she was unconscious. They'd left no message. But she did overhear something about plane tickets. Aurora didn't want to believe it. Her relationship with her parents had always been lopsided. She was the responsible, overlooked daughter. Ethan was the golden boy. Still, she had believed that when it truly mattered, when her life was on the line, they would choose her. She was wrong. That voicemail tore through her like shrapnel. There was no apology, no fear in their voices, just the excitement of pasta and ruins and Italian fashion, and a clear directive. "Don't call us while we're in Rome." She lay back in her bed, numb, her eyes fixed on the ceiling tiles, counting the silence between beeping machines. The surgeons had told her recovery would take months, multiple operations, grueling rehab. But no one had prepared her for this kind of pain. The kind that comes when your own family chooses tourism over your trauma. Head nurse Riley Thompson walked in. That day the whole hospital knew. A young woman left behind, alone, broken, and betrayed. And yet strangers began to step up where family had failed. Riley stayed past her shifts. The night janitor brought her snacks. A fellow patient started calling her kiddo and stood guard when doctors asked about family consent forms. Aurora didn't know what would come next, but one thing had shifted. If her family could leave her at her lowest, then maybe they weren't her family after all. From the outside, the Parker family looked picture perfect. They lived in a modest but well-kept home in Evanston, Illinois, just north of Chicago. Her father, Gerald Parker, taught high school history and was beloved by his students. Her mother, Karen, ran a small bookkeeping service from home. And then there was Ethan, Aurora's younger brother. Athletic, charming, always in the spotlight. And Aurora? She was the easy one. The self-motivated, quiet, independent daughter who never needed anything. The one who earned straight A's, followed the rules, and never asked for help. While Ethan's basketball trophies lined the shelves, Aurora's academic awards sat in a dusty box in the basement. Every Christmas dinner, every lake trip, every family reunion had a theme, and the theme was usually Ethan. Aurora took the photos, made the food runs, helped clean up. She was there, but never quite centered. When Aurora earned a full scholarship to study computer science at the University of Illinois, her parents congratulated her with a smile and a sigh of relief. "That's a blessing," her father had said. "One less thing to pay for." She remembered those words more clearly than the applause she got on stage. Her college graduation conflicted with one of Ethan's playoff games, so her parents didn't attend. "You're always so independent," her mother had said. "You understand, right?" Aurora said yes, she always did. After college, Aurora joined Redline Tech, a growing Chicago software firm, and quickly rose through the ranks. By 25, she was a senior engineer making six figures. Quietly, she began to help her parents. A small credit card bill here, an overdue utility there. They were grateful, at first. But the requests became regular, then expected. Before long, Aurora was covering $1,200 a month for the mortgage, $800 a month for each of their 2 car payments, $2,000 a month for household costs, $500 a month for Ethan's career search, which mostly funded video games and craft beer. In total, nearly $10,000 a month left Aurora's accounts. She lived modestly, renting a small one-bedroom in Logan Square, eating ramen at the end of every month while her family installed a pool, booked spa weekends, and texted her vacation selfies with "Thanks, Aurora" captions. Her parents retired early, citing health issues no doctor had ever diagnosed. Aurora was working 60-hour weeks. Her family was living off her labor. But she kept going. Why? Because she believed that was love. Because she was told it was love. Until one day, she said it. "I need to start saving. I want to buy my own place." Her mother cried. Her father shouted. Ethan rolled his eyes and muttered, "You're selfish." They reminded her of every meal, every field trip, every winter coat. "We gave you everything growing up. You owe us." That night, Aurora drove home in silence, and 2 weeks later, her car was totaled by a drunk driver. She didn't know it yet, but her awakening had already begun. Aurora had always thought helping her parents financially was just part of being a good daughter. In the beginning, it felt right. One overdue power bill, one emergency appliance repair. Her parents, Gerald and Karen Parker, would thank her profusely, send sweet texts with heart emojis and "we're so lucky" messages. But slowly the gratitude faded, and the requests became expectations. "Dad's thinking about trading in the car. Could you help with the down payment? Ethan wants to enroll in an online personal development course. Mom's doctor said stress was affecting her blood pressure. A backyard spa might help." Before she knew it, Aurora wasn't helping anymore. She was funding a lifestyle. By 25, Aurora was paying nearly $10,000 a month to support her family. She had spreadsheets, timed transfers, notes to herself about due dates. The breakdown was sobering. $1,200 mortgage, $1,600 2 SUV payments, $2,000 household expenses, $500 Ethan's career growth, usually used for Xbox games, sneakers, and VIP concert tickets. Extras, Dad's golf club dues, streaming services, utilities, subscription boxes, spa treatments. Her own life? A one-bedroom walk-up in Logan Square with cracked tiles and a fridge that groaned louder than the L train. Her work laptop was 6 years old. She meal prepped with tuna cans and peanut butter. Meanwhile, her mom posted poolside pictures, Ethan bragged about music festivals, Dad uploaded golf swing videos captioned, #retirement goals. Aurora started to question it, and when she did, the backlash was swift. "You want your father to suffer in his golden years? Your brother's just trying to find himself. Families help each other. You're being selfish." And she believed them because she always had. But the worst part wasn't the money. It was the loss of control. Back in college, Aurora had given her mom access to a few of her accounts to help with bill paying. After graduation, she never took it back. She trusted her. Karen had once knit her scarves by hand in the dead of winter. That trust seemed sacred. Lying in a hospital bed, Aurora opened her banking app. What she saw made her blood run cold. $3,200 to a luxury. These weren't emergency charges. These were evidence that her role had shifted from daughter to financier, and the memories followed. Her 16th birthday, canceled dinner because Ethan had basketball practice, parents' weekend in college, skipped for her dad's golf tournament, emergency appendectomy, a quick visit, then off to a concert they couldn't miss. Aurora once thought it was bad timing. Now she saw the pattern. She wasn't priority. She was payroll. And the worst part? She had allowed it. But not anymore. What had started as a quiet ache was becoming something else. A fire. A resolve. For the first time in years, Aurora was ready to say no. Aurora knew something had to change. She stared at her budgeting spreadsheet, heart sinking. Every month, nearly all of her six-figure salary was funneled into her family's lifestyle. By the time she paid rent, health insurance, and groceries, she was left with just enough to scrape by. Her savings account, once meant for a down payment, sat nearly untouched. Meanwhile, her mom posted spa selfies with her book club. Ethan flashed photos of the Dodge Challenger Aurora financed, and her dad, supposedly plagued with health issues, spent his weekends swinging clubs at a private golf course. Aurora wasn't angry. Not yet. She was just tired. Tired of being responsible for 3 grown adults who treated her success as a communal asset. That Friday, she drove to their house in Evanston. In her bag, she carried a folder detailing every dollar sent over the last 18 months and a phased plan to reduce her support to 50% over 3 months. She'd practiced her words, kept them kind, rational. But kindness had no place at that table. Karen was the first to speak, through tears. "I can't believe you do this now, when I'm dealing with my blood pressure, when your father is trying to relax in retirement." Gerald's face turned red. "We gave you everything. This is how you repay us?" Ethan chuckled from the couch. "Called it. Soon as you started making money, you thought you were better than us. You forgot who raised you." Aurora didn't answer. She wanted to. She wanted to say she raised herself, that no one came to her college graduation, that she made it through life alone, even when surrounded by people who shared her last name. But what was the point? This wasn't a conversation. It was a condemnation. She left without looking back. 2 weeks later, Aurora was working late on a Friday night. A major product release was coming, and she wanted to make sure everything went smoothly. She stayed long after her team left, double-checked code, packaged deployment files, and finally, close to midnight, she logged off. Her steps echoed in the parking garage. Chicago's fall air bit at her skin as she reached her car, coffee in hand. She felt tired, but good. She'd earned this. A promotion was on the horizon. She'd start looking at condos next week. She pulled out of the garage, waited at the light. It turned green. She turned left. She never saw the SUV. It ran the red light doing 55. It hit her broadside. Driver's side. The world shattered. She woke up 2 days later, surrounded by tubes, wires, beeping machines. She couldn't feel her legs. Her ribs burned. Her head throbbed. The doctor told her she was lucky. Both femurs were broken. Internal bleeding had required emergency surgery. She'd need rods in her legs, a month of hospitalization, and 6 months of physical therapy. Her first words weren't, "How bad is it?" They were, "Where's my family?" The nurse hesitated. They were contacted immediately. They came, briefly, while you were unconscious. Aurora blinked. They left? The nurse nodded. They said they had travel plans. A voicemail blinked on her phone. She hit play and heard her mother's voice, giddy, excited. Hi, sweetie. We're at O'Hare, about to board for Rome. Ethan's coming too. Poor kid's between jobs again. The doctor said you'll be in the hospital a while, so we figured we'd finally take that trip. A pause. Her father's voice in the background. Tell her not to call. International roaming is expensive. Karen added cheerfully, Right. Don't call us while we're in Rome. Then Ethan. Thanks for the spending cash, sis. Ciao, Bella. The message ended. Aurora lay there, eyes wide, breath shallow. It wasn't the broken bones that hurt the most. It was finally realizing that they never saw her as someone to love, only someone to use. After the voicemail, Aurora didn't speak, didn't cry, didn't scream. She just stared at the ceiling. The pain meds dulled the physical agony, but nothing could numb the weight that sat on her chest, sharp, cold, and pressing harder with every breath. When Dr. Monica Lewis entered to check her vitals, she found Aurora motionless, tears slipping silently into her pillow. She said nothing, just took Aurora's hand and whispered, You don't deserve this. Within hours, word spread through Whispering Pines Medical Center. The woman who nearly died in a crash, abandoned by her parents, who were now in Italy, on her dime. Riley, the nurse, started stopping by more often. She brought snacks, snuck in real coffee, and told stories about her three-legged rescue dog. For the first time in days, Aurora smiled. Even Samantha, her elderly roommate recovering from gallbladder surgery, stepped in fiercely. When a young intern asked, Where's her family? Someone needs to sign the care documents. Samantha snapped, She has family, me. Now explain those options again, but in English this time. That night, Aurora made the mistake of scrolling social media. She just wanted a distraction. What she found was confirmation. A photo posted 3 weeks earlier. Her mother, father, and Ethan holding up printed plane tickets to Rome. Caption, Counting down to our dream trip, 21 days to go. Her heart dropped. That was before the crash. Not a spontaneous getaway. Not a coincidence. They'd planned this trip knowing she'd be hospitalized. They went anyway. Her hands trembled as she scrolled. Her mom in designer sunglasses outside a boutique in Rome. Her dad eating gelato near the Trevi fountain. Ethan in a leather jacket, posing with a Vespa. Not a single word about Aurora. No mention. No update. Just living la dolce vita. Then came the banking app. She opened it, hoping, somehow, it was all a misunderstanding. But there it was, a $15,000 charge to an elite travel agency, dated 2 days after the accident. They'd walked into her hospital room, saw her unconscious, hooked to tubes and monitors, and still boarded that flight. Paid with her card. Aurora didn't cry. She just stopped feeling altogether. It was nearly 3 a.m. when she saw the final photo. A rooftop dinner in Rome. Her family, champagne flutes raised high. Caption, To freedom and new beginnings. Her fingers tightened. Then she threw the phone across the room. It hit the wall. Cracked. Shattered. Like her illusions. The night nurse burst in. Aurora, shaking and sobbing, barely got the words out. They never loved me. I was just... money. The nurse sat beside her, took her hand gently and said, Anyone who would leave their daughter in a hospital to go sightseeing doesn't deserve your tears, and they sure as hell don't deserve your money." For the first time, Aurora believed her. Something in Aurora shifted after that night. Not her body. She was still broken, stitched together with rods and sutures. Every movement was a lesson in patience and pain. But inside, something stirred, a small, flickering sense that maybe she didn't have to endure this alone. Not anymore. It started with Riley Thomas, the night shift nurse. There was no pity in Riley's voice, just presence, calm, steady. She noticed the little things, that Aurora didn't like ice in her water, so she brought her a bottle without it, that she preferred peppermint tea to the bitter hospital coffee, so Riley brewed a cup before every shift. She didn't pry, she didn't push. She just showed up, consistently, quietly, as if to say, "I'm here. You're not invisible." Then there was Samantha Wilson, 60, tough, recovering from gallbladder surgery. She had a daughter who lived out west and texted once a week, but Samantha didn't wallow. She took charge. When she saw Aurora staring at the ceiling for hours, she tossed a book onto her table. The Year of Magical Thinking by Joan Didion. "Not cheerful," she said, "but honest." The next day, she brought headphones and a playlist of audiobooks. "Don't tell my daughter," Samantha winked. "She thinks I'm at bridge club." It was ridiculous, and it meant everything. Walter, the elderly janitor, started lingering longer near her room. He shared stories about his grandkids, always with a raspy laugh. Sometimes he left notes tucked under her pillow. Cookies don't heal bones, but they help angry souls. Aurora didn't understand why these people were being so kind. She had nothing to give, no energy, no cheer. But she learned something she hadn't known in 27 years. Real kindness doesn't come with a bill. She had always believed that family was fate, that you get what you get, that love was measured by bloodlines and obligations. But here, in the sterile halls of Whispering Pines, that belief started to crumble. Family could be a nurse who remembers your tea preference, a hospital roommate who defends you to interns, a janitor who brings cookies instead of cliches, and a quiet hospital room where no one asks you to pretend. In between physical therapy sessions and painful breathing exercises, Aurora found herself slowly stitched together again, not just by doctors, but by these people, these strangers who saw her pain and didn't look away. Bit by bit, the emptiness her family left behind began to fill. One taco, one audiobook, one joke about bridge club at a time. And then one evening, Riley stayed after her shift and brought 2 takeout containers from a taco truck outside the ER. They sat in silence, eating side by side. Aurora looked up and asked quietly, "Why are you doing this?" Riley shrugged. "Because you deserve it." Simple. Direct. No drama. But it hit harder than anything her parents had ever said. They'd spent thousands of her dollars, and never once said she deserved anything. Aurora didn't respond, but for the first time in weeks, she finished every bite. The morning light wasn't any different, but Aurora was. She sat up in her hospital bed, slow and steady, wincing as her legs, held together by rods and screws, pulled against her skin. Every movement still hurt, but for the first time the pain felt like a reminder. You're still here. Last night, Riley had helped her review her bank statements. Line after line of expenses, unauthorized, unapproved, unspoken. They weren't just transactions. They were proof. Proof that her family hadn't just failed to show up. They'd used her. And then left. Aurora pressed the call button. When the nurse appeared, she didn't ask for pain meds. "I need to speak with a hospital social worker," she said. "As soon as possible." Enter Jessica Martinez. No nonsense. Efficient. Her eyes sharp, her tone grounded. Aurora told her everything. About the money, the power of attorney she'd never signed, the guilt, the silence. When she finished, Jessica nodded. "What you're describing is financial exploitation," she said, "and emotional abuse. And just because it's family doesn't make it okay. In fact, it makes it worse." Aurora didn't cry. She just felt seen. Jessica handed her brochures, scheduled therapy, and made a call to a financial advisor she trusted, Marcus Bennett. "He helps people reclaim control," she said. "You're going to need him." Marcus arrived with a laptop and fire in his eyes. "First, we take inventory," he said. "Then we build a wall." He pulled up accounts, requested access, reviewed logs. His verdict? "They've been treating your money like it's theirs. Because they've had access for so long, they think they're entitled." Together, they built the plan. New bank. New cards. Password resets. Revoking authorized users. Freezing accounts. Filing for credit card fraud. Every receipt. Every social media photo. Every voicemail. Documented. If the family tried to fight back, they'd be armed with truth. Then came Benjamin Clark, attorney, smart, calm, unshakable. "You're in the clear legally," he explained. "No guardianship, no power of attorney, no formal responsibility. You can walk away from this support system completely." He warned her of pushback, manipulation, guilt trips. "They'll call you cold, selfish, ungrateful. Don't listen." And then he paused. "Are you ready?" Aurora looked at him. Yes, more than ever. That night, Riley brought takeout again. This time, Aurora laid out the plan. Every step. The revoked access. The legal backup. The plan to reclaim her accounts and cancel their return flights home from Italy. Riley listened, then smiled. "You're not crazy," she said. "You're waking up." And for the first time in weeks, Aurora slept without fear. The next morning, when the sun filtered through the blinds, she didn't just wake up. She rose. Aurora woke up early, not because of the IV beeping or the nurse check-ins, but because today was different. Today, she was taking her life back. Riley walked in with 2 coffees and pulled a chair up beside her. "Ready?" Aurora nodded. "Let's do it." Step 1. The banks. Following Marcus's instructions, Aurora logged into her main checking account, the one where her mother had been an authorized user for years. Click, remove access, change password, activate 2-factor authentication. Then, she opened a new account at a different bank, linked to a brand new email and phone number. It wasn't liberation, not yet, but it was the first real cut of the cord. Step 2. The credit cards. She called them one by one. "I'm reporting fraudulent charges," she told each rep. "I was hospitalized at the time these purchases were made." Each company agreed to freeze the cards, investigate the Rome transactions, and issue new cards to a secure address. "That $15,000 trip," Aurora told Riley after the last call, "just became their problem." Riley laughed. First time they'll have to pay for their own plane ticket home. Aurora smirked. Not quite done yet. Next up, the return flights. Her father had booked their tickets home using her email and credit card. Aurora still had the confirmation code. She logged into the airline portal. A few clicks later, their business class return tickets from Rome to Chicago were canceled. A partial flight credit appeared in her account. They're stranded, she said. Riley blinked. They're going to lose it. That's the idea. Then came the utilities. She called each provider, electric, gas, internet. Canceled her credit card as the auto-pay method. Informed the companies she no longer resided at that address. Called the insurance company to stop payments on both SUVs. Contacted the leasing agency to reclaim Ethan's Dodge Challenger from long-term airport parking. She moved through the list like a surgeon. Precise, deliberate, focused. No rage. No tears. Just clarity. By the evening, she turned to Riley. One more thing. The house? Aurora nodded. She didn't own it legally, but inside were things that belonged to her. Birth certificate. Social security card. Medical records, childhood photo albums, her grandmother's jewelry, the pearl necklace Aurora had inherited but hadn't seen in years. She couldn't walk yet. But Riley had a plan. I'm off tomorrow. My brother has a truck. You've still got a key? And the alarm code hasn't changed. Then tomorrow, Riley said, we're getting your life back. Aurora smiled. This time, not with exhaustion, but with something far stronger. Resolve. The sky above Evanston was gray, still. But inside Aurora, everything was clear. Bundled in a scarf and hat, she sat upright in her wheelchair, hands calm in her lap. Riley was by her side. Driving the pickup was Danny, Riley's older brother, quiet, steady, and exactly the kind of person you'd want on a mission like this. They pulled into the driveway with a signed letter from Benjamin, outlining Aurora's legal right to retrieve her personal belongings. You're not breaking in, Riley reminded her gently. You have a key, and this used to be your home too. I'm not taking what isn't mine, Aurora said. But I'm taking back everything they took from me. The house was empty, dead leaves scattered across the porch. The mailbox overflowed. Clearly, no one had been back from Rome yet. Aurora rolled her chair to the front door and used the key. Same key she'd had since high school. No alarm. No password change. They never thought she'd come back. They were wrong. She headed straight to her old room. The walls hadn't changed. Still pale blue. Still lined with yearbook photos and dusty honor roll plaques her parents never acknowledged. Aurora reached for a stack of letters, birthday cards from college friends, a note from her scholarship mentor, awards no one ever displayed. She placed them carefully into a labeled box. This wasn't junk. It was proof she existed, even when they didn't look. Next, documents. Birth certificate. Social security card. Medical files, transcripts, college acceptance letters. Everything her mom once promised to keep safe had been tucked away, locked in a beige folder buried in the back of her mother's vanity drawer. Riley found it. Here, she said, handing it over. No one owns your name but you now. They moved to the master bedroom, once her grandmother's. Aurora opened the old carved wooden box at the top shelf of the closet. Inside, a pearl necklace, a pair of ruby earrings, and a delicate white gold bracelet. They had belonged to her grandmother, who had left them explicitly to Aurora in her will. but Karen had claimed them instead. "I'll keep them safe," she once said. "You're too young." Then she wore them to fundraisers and posted photos with captions like, "Family legacy, forever mine." Not anymore. Aurora wrapped the jewelry in a velvet pouch and placed it in her side bag. That legacy was coming home. Then came Ethan's room. Tucked in his desk drawer, she found brochures for retirement condos in Florida, a handwritten budget, a title scrawled in thick black ink, "Aurora covers the rest." They were planning to move, to retire early, to live in sunny condos paid for by her, without ever asking. Aurora said nothing, but the grin she gave Riley, sharp as a blade. As Danny loaded the final box into the truck, Aurora took one last look at the house. It had once been home. Now it was just a shell. And she? She wasn't the girl who lived there anymore. She was something else now. Aurora had been sleeping soundly when her phone buzzed with one notification after another. Though she had blocked their calls, she'd left email open, per her lawyer Benjamin's advice, so she could document everything. The first message came from her mother. "Aurora, what is going on? The cards are locked, our accounts are frozen, and our return flights have been canceled. Fix this immediately. I'm in Rome with no money." Then her father. "We're stranded in Italy. You think this is funny? We're family. You have no right to do this." And Ethan. "Are you serious right now? You're really leaving us stuck in Europe over a car accident? Grow up, Aurora." Aurora didn't respond. She calmly filed each email into a folder labeled legal and tagged them in red. By morning, the tone shifted from angry to manipulative. "If this is about the trip, we can talk when we're back. You know Mom has blood pressure issues. Please don't add stress. You're destroying this family over one mistake." And then came the threats. "If you don't fix this, don't expect to be part of this family anymore. Dad is contacting a lawyer. You'll regret this." Aurora remained calm. She opened a new email, drafted carefully with Benjamin's help, and hit send. From Aurora Parker. To Gerald Parker, Karen Parker, Ethan Parker. Subject: Official response. During the 6 weeks I've spent hospitalized with life-threatening injuries, you chose to take an international vacation using my credit card without my consent. I have reclaimed control of my finances. I will no longer fund your lifestyle. Any further contact will be handled through my legal representative. I am open to conversation, but only in the presence of a licensed mediator. Any threats, manipulation, or verbal abuse will be recorded and may be submitted as legal evidence. Regards, Aurora. 5 days later, the hospital called. "Your family is here," the front desk said. "They're demanding to see you." Riley was at her side when the call came in. "You don't have to do this," she reminded her gently. "Not now. Not ever." "I do," Aurora said. She adjusted her posture in the wheelchair, sat taller, and requested hospital security to be present. "Let them come in," she said. And when the doors opened, they did. Karen looked disheveled, still wearing sunglasses indoors. Gerald's face was flushed red with rage. Ethan trailed behind, arms crossed. They stormed in, then froze at the sight of Riley standing protectively beside Aurora. Karen was the first to speak. "Who is she? Get her out. This is family business." "She stays," Aurora said, voice calm. "She's been here while you were sightseeing in Rome." Silence. Then Gerald exploded.
After everything we've done for you, you repay us with public humiliation?
Aurora didn't blink.
You left me alone in a hospital bed after a near-fatal crash, and now you're embarrassed?
Karen started to cry.
We'd been planning that trip for months. The doctor said you'd recover.
And what if I hadn't? Aurora asked quietly.
What if I died while you were posing at the Trevi fountain?
No one answered. Riley stepped in, her voice steady and firm.
Aurora had internal bleeding, emergency surgery. At one point, we considered putting her in a medically induced coma. We needed family input. No one answered.
Ethan scoffed.
This isn't about the accident. You just don't want to share your money. You've always been selfish.
Aurora turned to him, her tone sharpened.
I've paid for your car, your rent, your video games, your nights out. For 4 years. That's not selfish. That's being exploited.
The conversation spiraled, guilt, gaslighting, even threats of legal action. But Aurora held her ground. Finally, she opened a folder and handed it to Gerald. Inside, a set of terms drafted by Benjamin. No more financial support moving forward. One-time transitional allowance if they agree to terms. All communication must go through a mediator. Rebuilding the relationship is possible, but only with effort from both sides. Gerald scanned the pages, face darkening.
This is insulting. We're your parents, not clients.
Aurora stood up slowly with the help of her walker.
Then stop treating me like your personal bank.
Karen's voice cracked.
And if we refuse?
Aurora looked her dead in the eyes.
Then you're refusing me.
The confrontation left Aurora emotionally drained, but strangely at peace. Her parents had stormed out of the hospital room in a flurry of insults and threats, Ethan trailing behind with one last muttered jab about family loyalty. But none of it pierced her the way it might have weeks before, because now Aurora finally believed she didn't deserve to be treated that way. She wasn't cold. She wasn't ungrateful. She was done being used. The weeks that followed weren't easy. As expected, her family had to sell the house. Without her monthly contributions, they couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments. Gerald, after a string of angry emails and a particularly bitter voicemail about disloyal children, eventually took a job teaching part-time at a local community college. Karen, faced with financial reality for the first time in decades, started working part-time at a small bookstore in Evanston. Ethan couch-surfed with friends for a month. Then one afternoon, he showed up at Aurora's rehab center. He was awkward, defensive, still carrying some of the arrogance, but something about him was quieter.
I still think you overreacted,
he said, fidgeting in the visitor's chair.
But what they said in the car, after the hospital, it wasn't right.
It wasn't an apology, but for Ethan, it was a start. They began talking, slowly, cautiously. Over the next few visits, the conversation shifted from guilt and excuses to real life. Ethan admitted he had no clue how to live without someone bankrolling his life.
I don't know how to do this,
he confessed.
Budgeting, working, being an adult.
Aurora didn't roll her eyes. She didn't shame him. She just offered something more valuable than money. Guidance. I know someone at Tech Fusion, she said. They're hiring for an entry-level IT support role. It's not glamorous, but it's a start. I'll put in a word, if you're serious. He was. To her surprise, Ethan not only applied, but showed up on time for the interview. He got the job.
And months later, when he showed Aurora his first real paycheck, his face was lit up with something she hadn't seen before: pride. Her parents were slower to come around. Karen tried multiple tactics: tearful voicemails, guilt-ridden emails, even mailing a photo of Aurora as a baby with, "Do you remember how close we were?" written on the back. Aurora didn't fall for it. Every time they reached out, she replied the same way: "We can speak, but only with a therapist present." It took 6 months and a few more missed calls for them to finally agree. They met in a cozy therapist's office on the north side of Chicago. Dr. Fiona Marshall was firm, neutral, and refused to let emotional manipulation derail the sessions. The conversations were tense, awkward, sometimes explosive. But they were real. "I felt abandoned," Aurora said plainly. "And I realized that's not new. That's been the pattern my whole life." Karen tried to cry her way out of it. Gerald tried to intellectualize. Neither worked. Dr. Marshall simply held the space and let the discomfort breathe. "Healing doesn't mean forgetting," she said. "It means acknowledging the hurt and deciding what comes next." Meanwhile, Aurora's physical recovery continued. Each small milestone felt massive. Her first steps between the parallel bars. The day she stood without help. The morning she showered without assistance for the first time. Each victory wasn't just about her body healing. It was about her spirit reclaiming itself. And somewhere in between therapy sessions and physical therapy, Aurora began to rebuild her circle. She reconnected with old college friends she hadn't seen in years because her family always needed something. She started saying yes to dinner invitations. She met people who didn't know her as the provider, but as Aurora, the witty, thoughtful, fiercely smart woman she'd always been under the pressure. She kept seeing Riley too. What started as companionship in a hospital room evolved, carefully, into something more. Their first date was simple: a picnic in the hospital's garden, accessible and quiet. Their second date, Thai takeout in Aurora's new apartment, which she had chosen by herself, for herself, using her own money, finally saved now that she wasn't supporting 3 other adults. "You know what I first noticed about you?" Riley asked one night as they made dinner together. "You were hurt, shattered, but never once did you lose your dignity." Aurora smiled. For once, she believed it. 9 months after the accident, Aurora returned to work, part-time at first. Tech Fusion welcomed her back with open arms. Her desk was decorated with cards and plants. Her team cheered when she walked into the room with her walker. Her finances, once in ruins, were stabilizing. She rebuilt her savings. She opened a retirement account. She even started looking at property again, with boundaries, budgets, and a plan that didn't involve funding anyone else's life. The irony wasn't lost on her. Only when she stopped paying for others could she finally afford her own future. 1 year after the crash, Aurora hosted a small dinner in her new apartment. The guests weren't blood relatives. They were her people. Riley, of course. Danny and his girlfriend. Samantha, her old hospital roommate who still texted weekly. Walter the janitor, who brought cookies and corny jokes. Aunt Margaret, who now came over every Sunday for tea. Even Ethan came. It wasn't perfect. Conversations were awkward, emotions still raw, but it was honest. As the night ended and she stood quietly at the window with Riley beside her, looking out over the city, Aurora whispered, "Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads to the best change." Riley took her hand. And sometimes, she said, it leads you to the family you should have had all along. Aurora didn't reply. She didn't need to. Her silence was no longer weakness. It was peace. New Year's Eve in Chicago was colder than usual, but inside Aurora's apartment, there was warmth. Not from the thermostat, but from laughter, clinking mugs of hot cider, and the quiet joy of people who chose to be together. The lights were soft. A vinyl jazz record spun slowly in the background. On the couch sat Samantha, flipping through a photo album Aurora had finally put together. Aunt Margaret and Riley were in the kitchen, trying to negotiate who made better cornbread. Danny was assembling a bookshelf for Aurora's reading nook. And Ethan, yes, Ethan, was on the floor, playing fetch with Riley's three-legged rescue dog, Scout. It didn't look like a traditional family, but it felt like one. And for Aurora, that was enough. More than enough. The past year had reshaped her. In some ways, she still bore the marks of the crash. Thin scars along her thigh, a subtle limp on bad weather days. But her heart had healed in places she didn't know were fractured. She no longer jumped when her phone buzzed. She no longer felt guilt when she said no. She no longer wondered if she was too much or not enough for the people who raised her. She had learned to stop shrinking herself just to fit their vision of who she was supposed to be, because now she knew exactly who she was. Aurora stood by the window as midnight approached. The skyline glittered in the distance, a constellation of man-made stars. She exhaled slowly, letting go of a year that had broken her and built her back up. She thought about that night in the hospital, the voicemail, the pearls, the documents, the moment she canceled their plane tickets from Rome with shaking fingers, and she realized that wasn't revenge. That was reclamation. The old Here would have looked at tonight and felt guilt. Guilt for not inviting her parents, for creating new traditions, for laughing freely without wondering who might judge. But the Aurora of tonight? She felt none of that. Only clarity. Only pride. At exactly 11:59, Riley joined her at the window, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. 1 minute, she whispered. Aurora took a glass. They watched the countdown begin from a nearby rooftop party, their muffled voices echoing across the street. 5, 4, 3, 2. 1, boom! Fireworks exploded above Lake Michigan. Cheers erupted down the block. Riley leaned into her. Happy New Year, Aurora. Aurora smiled, eyes glistening. Happy New Me. They clinked glasses. Later that night, after the guests had gone and the dishes were washed, Aurora sat on the floor in her oversized sweatshirt and fuzzy socks. Scout curled up beside her. Riley, barefoot and glowing, sat across from her with a bowl of leftover mac and cheese. You look peaceful, Riley said, watching her. I am. Aurora took a breath. I thought healing would feel dramatic, like fireworks, like I'd wake up one day and suddenly be cured. And it didn't happen that way. She smiled. It was quiet, slow. I didn't even notice it at first, but now I look around and I realize this is the life I wanted, not the one I inherited, the one I built. Riley nodded. That's the best kind. A few days later, Aurora received an email from her mother. No threats, no tears, just a brief update. They'd moved into a small rental condo. Gerald was working 3 days a week. Karen was teaching a budgeting class at the bookstore. No apology, but no demands either. Aurora read it, then archived it. She didn't feel anger. She didn't feel pity. She just felt distance. And that was okay, because forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation. It didn't mean forgetting. It simply meant, you don't get to hurt me anymore. Months passed. Aurora returned to hiking trails she hadn't dared since before the accident. She mentored younger women in tech who were navigating toxic family dynamics. She hosted Sunday dinners with her chosen family, rotating who brought dessert. She started therapy not because she was broken, but because she wanted to grow even further. She didn't flinch when people asked about her parents. She just said, "We're in different chapters now." One spring evening, as cherry blossoms bloomed in the neighborhood park, Aurora pulled out a notebook and wrote, "Family is not defined by blood. It's defined by who stands beside you when the whole world turns away. I thought I needed revenge. What I really needed was freedom." She closed the book, stood up slowly, and walked home. Without pain, without fear, without apology. And this time, for the first time in her life,